I'm just going to quickly introduce Key Vault. So if you're not aware of what Key Vault is, it's a resource or a service that we can run up within Azure. So if you don't have access to do this, you may need to speak to your IT admins. But it's very, very simple to actually create a new Key Vault. So we come to create a new resource. We go and search for Key Vault, and it's this one right here, Key Vault. And you can see it's a Microsoft Azure service. One that I built earlier is my demo Key Vault here. What we end up getting is an area which we can very granularly control the permissions to. So I can either give, using access control, I can give people general access to the Key Vault, or I can actually give more specific access to various keys, secrets, or certificates. So it's a brilliant place to come and store your sensitive data, sensitive credentials. On the left-hand side, we've got our keys, we've got our secrets, we've got certificates. And so what I have done is, given that this is called Keeping the Secret, I have created 2 secrets in my Key Vault, one for the client ID, one for the client secret. And these are just containing the app registration information that I've been using in my flow already. So it's exactly the same data, but we're just completely locking it away from anyone who doesn't necessarily need to be able to access it. So how do we interact with Key Vault then from a flow perspective? Because at the moment, my client ID and my client secret don't exist here. I've just replaced this value because I want to do something about it. Now, the nice thing is, if I come to add an action and I go and search for Key Vault does have its own connector. Notice though that it is a premium connector. So for me to be able to take advantage of this, I need to have either a per flow license, maybe a per user license for Power Automate, or it needs to be associated with an app which has a premium license assigned to it. Whichever way we license it, we need to have it premium here. And when I've spoken about this with customers, the immediate reaction to every time you talk to somebody about premium, oh, that's going to cost more money. And yes, it is. And I think here in the UK at the moment, the cost of a per user license for Key Vault is £15. So what does £15 compare to, rather than the legal fees or the reputational damage that could be found because of not securing the data properly? And when you put it like that, you're talking thousands, maybe millions of pounds compared to 15. So having the conversation like this and actually putting these practices in place to reduce the risk of data breach, to reduce the risk of any sort of litigation being brought against you, absolutely outweighs any cost for creating a premium license. But I digress. Let's come back to here. So we've got Get Secret. I've stored all my information as secrets in Key Vault, so I'm going to use Get Secret. This is a named connection. So you can see here that this is connected as me, which means that me as the flow builder, in order for this to work, I need to have access to Key Vault and to that particular secret in Key Vault in order to be able to use it in my flow. So this is something to keep in mind again, especially as you're developing. What are the accounts that we are going to be using to go and connect to Key Vault in order to bring this through, because it is against a named account. But because it's against a named account, it will go and interrogate Key Vault for me. It will bring it back and it tells me the secrets that I have available. So I'm going to use this as my client ID, and I'm just going to quickly rename this client ID, and let's go for client secret. So secret, get the secret, rename, and let's bring my second secret through. Perfect. So now I've got my client ID and my client secret in place. Let's expand these out, because now that I've got actions in there, I've now got dynamic content I can use. And it's quite interesting looking at the dynamic content, because one of the things that we can do within Key Vault is we can create effectively publish dates, we can create expiry dates in terms of these secrets, and that information actually comes through as dynamic content. So if I know that I have validity periods for my secrets, I can do some checks in my flow to make sure that the key that or the secret that I'm retrieving is still valid. Oh, that's my client secret. I want my client ID to start off with. And let's just grab the value, because that's going to take whatever is stored in Key Vault and it's going to bring it through into my flow. Perfect. Okay, so let's just run and test this. And we'll get this running as level 3. And what we'll see is that it will call out, rather than storing it in here, my flow will still successfully run. Okay, and I've left these as open for now, just so that you can see what's coming through. So you can see that it's pulled through the client ID, it's pulled through the client secret, and then carried on through the flow. Now, as you can see there, even though I'm getting a secret from Azure Key Vault, it still comes through into my flow as something that is clear. So what would I do? I go and turn on my secure inputs and outputs just to make sure that even at runtime, that information still isn't being visible. There we go. Oops. So now, stop clicking. What I've done is I've now secured the flow of data as it's going through my flow, and I've now taken out the sensitive information that is being stored or hard coded into the flow, and I've taken it away and put it somewhere more secure. So far, so good. But there's one more level that we can still explore. And that is where we now start to investigate how we remove the reliance on the individual user having access to Key Vault. Maybe your security administrators don't want you to have access to Key Vault as a named user. They maybe want to use service principals instead. And so this is where we can go to level 4. Because about Q4 last year, Microsoft released the ability for us to use what are called Dataverse secrets. And this is really interesting because we can configure a relationship between Dataverse and Key Vault. So we've still got Key Vault in the mix, but now the relationship between the two isn't from a user perspective, it's from a service to service perspective. So we can configure Dataverse using environmental variables to go and talk to Key Vault to bring it back into Dataverse for us to be able to use in our flows. This is also great, especially if we've got reuse that we are interested in, so that I can, because I can then only have one call or one configuration out to Key Vault and I can reuse it. But there's a few more steps that we need to run through to make this happen. And the journey, first of all, starts off in Azure again. So I'm going to come back to my the homepage of Azure. The first thing that we need to do, and I'm going to run through this in just really as an overview in one subscription, and I'm going to go to the one where I've actually created all this, because it can take sometimes maybe up to an hour for this to actually run. I'm going to start off in my pay-as-you-go, and then I'm going to switch across to my Visual Studio one. If I come to my pay-as-you-go subscription here, and I scroll down on the left-hand side, I have what are called resource providers. And those resource providers are effectively Microsoft services that can speak and consume resources or services within Azure. Let's just go and filter this down. If I go and start typing Power, the thing that I have here is called Power Platform. So I can configure Power Platform as a resource provider within Azure to this particular subscription. Now, if I have multiple subscriptions, I'm going to have to do this multiple times. So just keep that in mind, because you may have a dev, test, prod, subscription. You may have different subscriptions for different areas, different regions, maybe. So we have to do this multiple times. The first thing that I need to do is register it. If you click on the link, which is the what seems like the most obvious thing to do, it doesn't really do anything. All it does is open up the details. I need to get rid of that. What I need to do is highlight the row. So you can see here now Microsoft Power Platform as a highlight, and I click on register, and that will then start the registration process and begin the almost like the handshake between Azure and Dataverse. What that looks like once we've actually got to that point, let's just skip across into my other one. So into my into here, let's come to resource providers and then come to Power. So you can see now in this case, I've got Power Platform and it's got a tick against registered. So this subscription has an understanding, it's got that handshake in place between the two services. That is step one. Step two, I need to create my key vault if I've not already created one. I've already created one, so I can come into this. Step three is configure Dataverse or the Power Platform to have access to our key vault. So if I come here to my access control on the left-hand side and look at my role assignments, you can see down here, I've got Dataverse listed as effectively a type of app. So it's an app usage rather than a user usage. And it's being given the key vault secrets user role. That's the role that Dataverse needs. If I want to add that, I come to add and I come to add role assignment. Choose the role that I want. And then in members, select user group or service principal. Now it's the service principal that we are interested here. So if I select members and go and search for Dataverse, then you can see here I've got Dataverse or Dataverse resource provider. Let's go and add the Dataverse and press select. Okay, so effectively that then adds in Dataverse into into my key vault as an entity that can go and access it. Awesome. So now I've got access control created, I've got secrets in here, and I've got a handshake between Dataverse and key vault. So the thing that I need to do now, I'm just going to come back to my demo key, come back to the top level, come back to the overview. And what we need to do now is configure Dataverse to actually start using this. So what are we going to do? Let's skip across to Dataverse and just go and have a look at what we've got there. So in this case, I have a solution and I've got a solution in, and in here I have environmental variables. Those environmental variables are the key things that we need. I'm going to go and click on environmental variables. And in here, you can see that I have an environmental variable and it is of type. Let's see if I can expand that out. Oh, it's not showing me. If I expand it out, you can see I've got a data type of secret. So normally when we create environmental variables, things that exist in an environment that we can reuse across flows, they're normally text or JSON or one of the basic types of data type that we use. But we have secret. Now what I'm going to point out to you here is you have a link here which is learn more about environmental variable secrets. And the reason I'm making a point of pointing out that link is that will guide you through everything that I've just done from an Azure configuration perspective through to how you configure the Dataverse environmental variables. Everything is in there step by step. It's a very, very good guide. So do follow that through. So what we have in here and what we have to provide our environmental variable is we have to tell it where it's going to get the data from, the subscription ID, the resource group, key vault, and the secret name. So we give it a bunch of information that we need to give it. Let's go through and create one because I haven't got At the moment, one for my secret, I've only got the client ID coming through. So let's go and create a new environmental variable. And this is my keeping the secret, KB client secret. And just because my own OCD will kick in if I don't keep my naming convention, I'm just going to change the name. So I've got a display name, I've got an internal name, I choose my data type, and as you can see, here are my normal ones. But I'm going to go and select secret. And once I've selected secret, it's going to ask me where's the store. Now, in this case, it's just going to look at it as your key vault. So let's go and select it. Just like a normal environmental variable, I can give it default values if I want to, and I can also add environment-specific configurations. So if I go and add a new key vault secret reference, I need a subscription ID, a group name, vault name, secret name. 4 key pieces of info. And actually, Microsoft have made it quite easy to go and get all this. Let's come back to Key Vault for a moment. And the reason why I came back to the overview of the Key Vault is effectively everything that I want, or at least 3 things on there, are on this first overview page. What was the first thing I needed? I needed my subscription ID. Here's my subscription ID with a handy copy to clipboard link on the right-hand side. Let's go and paste that in. Next, the resource group. Again, here's my resource group, handy little copy. And let's paste that in. What is the name of the key vault? Unfortunately, no handy little copy link this time, but it is listed right up here. So I'm just going to copy that to my clipboard and paste that in. And then finally, the secret, which is in my secrets here. And just so I can copy and paste it, I'm going to click on there. Let's go and grab it. And let's paste that in. And let's press save. So now I've given it all the key information that I need. For those 4 key pieces of info that will allow us to bring a secret into Dataverse for me to then use in my flow. Just while that is saving, what Microsoft do recommend, and again, that's the recommended practices are on the link that I see Betty. Thank you very much for posting that into chat. It does go into there that there are recommended practices about having separate key vaults per Dataverse environment. So if you have a dev environment, you have a dev key vault. You have a test and a prod, you have a test and a prod key vault. So a good idea to have that separation in there as well. Awesome. So we've now got a point where we've got 2 variables created. Let's come to my level 4. So here's my level 4 flow. Back to the state that we were after level 2, which is effectively I've got my replace this values for my client ID and client secret. In level 3, we added an action and we went and used the Key Vault connector to talk directly to Key Vault. This time, I'm going to use Dataverse because we've just created an environmental variable. Now, what I want to very quickly point out before I do that is, unlike other environmental variables that appear in here, notice that my secret variables aren't listed there. And that's because I need to tell Dataverse to go and have that conversation with Dataverse. So I'm going to use one of the background processes that's in Dataverse. So I'm going to add a Dataverse action. And because this action that I'm about to take isn't directly related to one of the tables or related to an action on data coming from Dataverse, I have what's called an unbound action. Okay, so I then get a large number of unbound actions. Now, unbound actions are, when you see this appear, they are meant for more devy type people, or as more your intermediate to advanced level type of users, because it's not friendly what all of these, what all the names of these actions are. They are very, very devy still. I'm just going to go and type secret in there, because that's what I'm interested in. I've got a secret as a variable. And so I'm going to type secret and just remove all of those actions that I've got in there. And notice that I have this one here, which is retrieve environmental variable secret value. Let's go and click on there. And again, this is very much designed for more of the Devi type of flow makers, because we have environmental variable name and it's just free text. There's no selector to go, actually, I could probably try and find out what those variables are and then present them to you. No, we have to give it the name. The environmental variable name that it needs is the internal name. And quite often I've seen this fail because we've pasted in or just gone, you know what, it's going to take the display name. It's not. It's this one here. It's the internal name that once it's been set that we can't change, or the schema name as it's otherwise known. So we need that one. Let's go and put that into my unbound action. And let's just rename that. It's my client ID. And let's go and do the same again, but for my client secret. Dataverse, unbound action, filter it down to secret and retrieve the environmental secret value. Don't worry if you do get that little error to start off with, it's just because there was no direct match for secret. And let's go and grab my second internal name. Too far. Okay, so I've now got my client ID and client secret. Let's just go and put the dynamic content into the client ID. So unlike the key vault action, which gave us it actually gave us a lot of dynamic content for us to be using in our flow, what we've got with the unbound action really is one of two things. We've got the entire body that comes back, which is the response. And one of the disadvantages for using the old designer is that I can't see the whole thing here, but I also have the value, and it's the value that we're interested in. Oh, that's my client secret. Let's scroll down to my client ID. So if yep, that's my secret value. And let's just go and replace that one with, no, it doesn't like me searching for value. That secret and the response value. Right, what I'm going to do at this point is just very quickly save. Because what I'm going to do is point out one very big difference now between what we did within Key Vault and what we did within the Dataverse actions. So within Key Vault, when I first saved my flow, it didn't actually bring up anything in the flow checker to say that I hadn't secured the inputs or the outputs. But because Flow is aware that what we are pulling through from the environmental variable is a secret, it's going to give me a warning, not an error. So it's not going to stop me saving. It's not going to stop me running, but it is going to flag up that I am pulling through secret information and I should be turning on my inputs, my secure inputs and outputs. So let's go and do that. Let's turn on the settings, secure inputs, secure outputs, and do the same for the other. Okay, let's go and hit save, and I should see my my little flow warnings disappear now. Perfect, good. Right, now, moment of truth. Let's go and test it. Let's hit done. Perfect, good. So it's still run, but this time we've got massive obfuscation now of the data because the client ID and the client secret aren't in the flow. I, as a user, potentially can't access it because I don't have those. I don't have the credentials to go to directly to Key Vault, and so the relationship is through Dataverse, which is now much more controlled. But ultimately, what this has now given us is a very, very secure flow in terms of no secure data in there, no secure data visible while we are looking at the flow history, and complete separation, even to the point where we can have different roles looking after the secrets compared to the people who are building the flows. So you know what, this is now giving me a lot of ticks in the boxes, and I'm now absolutely sure that we are keeping the secret here. So question there in chat, does the system prevent you from cross-tenant connections to Key Vault from Dataverse? Great question. So if I'm being completely honest, I'll get back to you with an answer to that. I've not tried it cross-tenant. There's nothing in there that certainly in terms of the configuration that I've seen that binds it to a specific tenant. As long as I've got the subscription ID that I can get to, then that's all I'm being asked for. In the back of my head, part of me is also saying no, it's not going to work because of the ties between Dataverse being in my tenant and also Azure being in my tenant. But I will make sure that I get an answer to you about that with a definitive answer. But that's a great question. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so there we go. That's the end of the demos. So what have we learned? What have we tried to cover through the whole of this session? So the big thing, if you take anything away, please do consider data security while you are creating your flows. Think about what people can see when the flow is running, what people can see when they look at the flow history. Yes, thinking about the start and the end, ultimately, and where the data rests on either side is very, very important and absolutely critical. But don't forget this big glaring hole in the middle, which could actually shine a spotlight on where your data security needs to be improved. We've looked at a number of ways of being able to improve that security, or if you were to gamify this, your security score. So turning on secure inputs, secure outputs to make sure that the data is obfuscated when it's going through. Just remember, while you are deving, don't turn that on because you won't be able to see what's going on in your flow actions. But certainly when you deploy to production, make sure that is turned on. And we've also investigated the use of Key Vault along with our flows. And we looked at two different ways. We looked at the Key Vault action, which is very much the no-code, low-code route of doing this, and then also the unbound action to talk to Dataverse, which talks through the service provider into Azure and into Key Vault, which is the slightly more advanced user, or the slightly more advanced way of being able to do it. They all have their pros and cons. The right way for you is the right way for you. But as long as you're thinking security all the way through, then that is the key thing. Remember, data is one of the most valuable resources on the planet, so we need to protect it in every way we possibly can. So there we go. I'm going to pause for breath. Are there any other questions with regards to anything that we've covered today?